On July 7th, 2015, Ravinder Taker was hiking Camelback Mountain with her husband and son. She was 48 from England, visiting Phoenix on vacation. All three reached the summit together, 2,704 feet above the city, the valley spread below them in every direction. At the top, she began to feel unwell. She told her husband and son to go ahead without her. She would follow them down. She started descending the same trail they had just climbed, a trail marked with 37 numbered signs in the middle of a city of 5 million people. Her family reached the parking lot. She was not there. A search began. Her body was found 5 hours later in a ravine. That trail is Echo Canyon Trail on Camelback Mountain, the most used hiking trail in the state of Arizona, completed by somewhere between 450,000 and 1 million people every single year. It sits inside the Phoenix city limits, 10 minutes from downtown, surrounded by luxury hotels and residential neighborhoods. There are no remote approaches. There is no wilderness to cross. You drive to the trailhead on a city street, park in a lot, and begin. And people die on it repeatedly in ways that don't make sense when you look at a map. The year Ravinder Taker died, 2015, was not an outlier. By 2016, Phoenix New Times had counted at least 6 deaths on the mountain in the previous few years alone. The deadliest single year on record was 2014, when 4 people died in 3 separate incidents on Camelback. 2014, not 1954, not in some era before search and rescue, not before smartphones could call a helicopter. 2014, when hikers documented every step in real time, and the city of Phoenix had already built a helicopter landing pad on the mountain specifically to manage the rescue volume. That pad exists because rescues happen so often that waiting for helicopters to fly in from elsewhere was too slow. Phoenix Mountain Preserves generate roughly 200 search and rescue calls per year, and the majority come from Camelback. That works out to something close to 1 rescue every 2 days from a trail shorter than many urban running routes. Phoenix Fire Department data since 2021 counted 437 mountain rescues across Camelback, Piestewa Peak, and South Mountain. 71% of those rescues involved Arizona residents, not tourists, not people unfamiliar with the desert. Locals, people who had driven past that mountain their entire lives, who understood that Phoenix summers are extreme, who might have hiked Camelback before, who thought they knew what they were doing. That number reverses the assumption most people carry. The common explanation is that out-of-towners die because they don't know the conditions. The data shows that local familiarity doesn't protect people either. It may make things worse. And then the numbers began climbing. In 2025, Camelback Mountain saw a 75% increase in mountain rescues compared to prior years, according to a City of Phoenix report. Through the first 5 months of 2026, Phoenix fire crews had responded to 74 mountain rescues across the city's preserves, a more than 50% increase over the same period in 2025. Through July 31st, 2026, rescue incidents had risen nearly 20% year over year. The city deployed a dedicated 4-person mountain rescue truck, staffed by technical rescue team members, to operate on weekends through September 2026, because the surge in calls coincided with their primary rescue helicopter being taken out of service for repairs. In August 2026, a woman was airlifted from the halfway point of Echo Canyon Trail after her core body temperature exceeded 104 degrees Fahrenheit. She was described as being in an altered mental state. She was hoisted off the mountain by a Maricopa County Sheriff helicopter and received cold water immersion treatment at the base. The trail was closed for heat warnings for 45 days during the summer of 2024. The closures continued. The rescues kept climbing. So what is happening on a 2.4-mile trail in the middle of a major American city? The answer starts with what that city did to the mountain and what the mountain was before the city arrived. Camelback Mountain is ancient in a way that the word ancient barely captures. The granite forming its upper half is over 1.5 billion years old. The red sandstone at its base is a relatively young 25 million years. Long before Phoenix existed, before Arizona was a state, before European settlers arrived, the Hohokam people lived in the Salt River Valley and regarded Camelback as a sacred site. They built extensive canal systems in the surrounding desert and used the mountain's caves for ceremony. On the north face of the mountain, there is a grotto with a ceiling 40 to 50 feet high, the Camelback Grotto, where archaeologists found artifacts consistent with ritual use. The Hohokam called the mountain Sacred Mountain. They abandoned the area in the 14th or 15th century for reasons that remain unknown. For the centuries that followed, the mountain stood above open desert. In the early 20th century, as Phoenix began to grow, Camelback became surrounded by citrus groves and ranches. By mid-century, as the city expanded rapidly, the mountain nearly disappeared into private development. Armed guards turned back hikers who wandered onto private land. It could have become a gated enclave entirely enclosed by the neighborhoods growing at its base. Barry Goldwater and others pushed against that outcome. In 1968, the Echo Canyon Recreation Area was formally established, opening the mountain to the public. In 2013 and 2014, the Echo Canyon Trail was closed for renovation and reopened in January 2014. As part of that reopening, 2 large warning signs were installed, one at the trailhead, one at the half-mile mark, noting that the trail's vertical gain exceeds the height of the Empire State Building. The signs were there before Ravinder Thakar hiked in 2015. They were there before every death that followed. The warning was visible. The problem was what people did after they read it. Echo Canyon Trail begins gently. There is a wide gravel path in the first quarter mile, a manageable grade, classic Sonoran desert vegetation on either side, saguaro cactus, palo verde trees, open sky. The first stretch feels like a warm-up. Then the trail changes completely. The grade steepens. The surface shifts to exposed rock. Sections require scrambling on hands and knees. There are metal handrails anchored directly into the stone because the incline is too steep without them. The city of Phoenix rates both Camelback trails as extremely difficult, the equivalent of a double black diamond ski slope. In 1.2 miles, the trail climbs between 1,200 and 1,530 feet depending on the measurement, all of it exposed to direct sun the entire way up. There is no shade on this trail. None. The City of Phoenix Park's website describes it as completely exposed to the elements. The sandstone absorbs heat, the granite radiates it back. On a Phoenix summer morning, the rock surface temperature can exceed the already extreme air temperature by a significant margin, and you're standing on it, in it, surrounded by it for the entire ascent. Here is what that does to you and why you don't know it's happening until it's too late. You start climbing. You brought water. You feel the exertion and you slow your pace, drink, keep moving. The city is below you, visible and reassuring. Other hikers are on the trail in both directions. The markers are numbered. You have a trail app or you've read a guide. Everything about the environment tells you that you are in a managed, populated, well-understood place. What your body is doing does not announce itself. Research into direct solar exposure and cognition has found that prolonged direct sunlight on the head and neck elevates core temperature and impairs combined motor cognitive performance. Importantly, impairment begins at lower hyperthermia levels when the head is directly exposed to solar radiation than it does in controlled laboratory heat environments. Your brain is heating from the outside in. The effect is cumulative. You don't feel it as confusion, you feel it as tiredness. The distinction matters enormously. Other research on passive hyperthermia has found that elevated core temperature specifically impairs working memory and executive function. Brain activity changes to support basic task performance even before outward behavior changes, which means you can appear to be functioning normally, making decisions that feel rational, while the cognitive processes responsible for navigation, risk assessment, and route finding have already degraded. You reach the summit. You have climbed more vertical elevation than the Empire State Building is tall, in under a mile and a half in direct Arizona sun. You take a photograph. The view is genuine, 360 degrees over the Valley of the Sun, the city you can almost reach out and touch. You feel the accomplishment. You drink the last of your water, or nearly all of it. You rest a few minutes. You start back down. You are not the same person who started climbing. Your core temperature has been rising for 40 minutes. Your working memory is degraded. The trail is still marked with those 37 numbered signs. The route looks familiar because you just walked up it. But the part of your brain responsible for reading an environment, recognizing a wrong turn, responding to early warning signs from your own body, that part is already compromised. The problem is that none of this feels like a crisis. It feels like being tired. It feels like the natural consequence of a hard physical effort. You keep moving. And the descent is harder than people expect. At a maximum grade of 41%, going down requires braking force from leg muscles that have already been working hard for over an hour. The rocky surface that requires scrambling on hands and knees on the way up requires careful foot placement and handrail use on the way down. A slip on fatigued legs at 41% grade is not a stumble, and it can become a fall before a handrail is within reach. Your water is gone or nearly gone. The heat has not diminished. The sun is higher now than when you started. If you began early to avoid the heat and took a reasonable amount of time to summit, you are now descending in the hottest part of a Phoenix morning. Phoenix Fire Captain Rob McDade has described the rescue pattern at Camelback in terms that have held consistent across years of data. The overwhelming majority of people who need rescue made it to the top. They ran out of energy, they ran out of water, and they got hurt on the way down. And the summit is not the finish line. It is the midpoint of an effort that has depleted almost everything the descent requires. When heat impairment reaches a threshold, the person experiencing it is the last one to know. Overheated hikers who become disoriented do not feel lost. They feel tired and slightly confused and certain they are heading the right way. The well-marked trail with 37 numbered signs offers no protection against a brain that cannot reliably read markers, process their sequence, or recognize when a step off the trail edge is a step into a gully. That is what the mechanism looks like from inside it. Now consider what else is stacked on top of it. Camelback Mountain is surrounded by luxury resorts and restaurants. You can see hotel pools from the trail. When you look out from the parking lot, you see a well-maintained recreation area. You see families with children near the trailhead. The environment sends every possible signal that this is a managed, accessible, ordinary outdoor activity, a bucket list hike with panoramic rewards and a quantifiable distance. The Phoenix Fire Department captain, who arrived at multiple fatal and near-fatal scenes, said it plainly: it doesn't look ominous, and it doesn't seem as bad as it is. That disconnect is not incidental. It is the mechanism's precondition. The urban setting creates a category error. People do not approach Camelback the way they approach a remote mountain. They approach it the way they approach a city park. No supplies staged, no itinerary filed, no exit strategy for the descent. The visitor numbers reinforce this. If 500,000 people hike this trail annually, it must be manageable. That is the unconscious logic. Crowds create confidence. Long lines at the trailhead suggest a thing people do comfortably. What they actually suggest is that many people make it down, and that the percentage who do not is large enough to justify a permanent helicopter pad and a dedicated rescue truck. The heat threshold is invisible until it is crossed. Phoenix in July averages a daily high of 106 degrees Fahrenheit. The mountain's record heat came in June 2016, when temperatures reached 118 degrees in the city below. The trail is fully south-facing and completely open. The same August 2026 incident that required an airlift from the halfway point ended with paramedics at the base confirming a core body temperature exceeding 104 degrees in a woman who was fully conscious but in an altered mental state, heat stroke by clinical definition presenting as disorientation rather than collapse. Heat reduces aerobic capacity by roughly 7%, increases perceived exertion by nearly 20%, and elevates core temperature faster than the body's cooling mechanisms can compensate during sustained uphill exertion in direct sun. What this means in practice is that a hiker's body is working harder than it feels like it's working, using water faster than expected, and approaching the cognitive threshold for impairment before they experience anything identifiable as an emergency. The depletion trap closes around the summit. By the time a hiker stands at the top, they have consumed most of what they brought. There are no water sources on the trail. There are no services on the mountain. The shade that will let a person rest and cool down does not exist. The helicopter pad exists because without it, a person in heat crisis at the summit faces a weight that the trail's grade makes dangerous to traverse while compromised. And then there is what happens when a group separates. 2 of the deaths documented at Echo Canyon Trail followed the same sequence. One person in a group felt unwell and decided to turn back or fall behind while others continued. The separation felt reasonable. The person turning back was not incapacitated, not yet. They were declining, which is exactly the phase in which a person's judgment about their own condition is least reliable. Heat impairment does not feel like impairment from the inside. It feels like a manageable decision to rest and take a shorter path to the car. The Phoenix Fire Department's response to this pattern is explicit. If you start as a group, you should end as a group. The hiker who turns back alone is removing the only external monitor for a condition that prevents self-monitoring. Falls add a second mechanism that operates independently of heat. The descent's combination of grade, loose rock, leg fatigue, and handrail sections creates fall risk that compounds with any degree of physical or cognitive impairment. At a maximum grade of 41%, a misstep does not offer recovery time. In September 2025, a body was found in a gully off Echo Canyon Trail. A park ranger discovered it. Firefighters recovered it and concluded the man had fallen. It was not clear how long the body had been there on one of the most trafficked trails in Arizona. Finally, consider the rescue math. In the summer of 2026, with Phoenix Mountain rescues running nearly 20% ahead of the previous year, the department's primary rescue helicopter was out of service. A dedicated 4-person truck was deployed on weekends to keep response capacity at a functional level. The mountain is 10 minutes from downtown Phoenix, and a person in heat crisis at the summit can wait longer for help than the surrounding city suggests they should. The urban proximity that makes people feel safe is not the same as urban infrastructure once you are 500 feet above the parking lot. On July 30th, 2021, Angela Tremont was hiking Echo Canyon Trail. She was 31, from the Boston area, and it was her first visit to Phoenix. She had started the trail that morning with a male companion, a man she had recently met. Approximately halfway up, Tremonte became severely overheated. She decided to turn back and descend while her companion continued to the summit. He had hiked Camelback before. By his account, he had done the climb before, in summer. He continued up, reached the summit, and came back down. When he returned to the parking lot, she was not there. He called police. That was approximately 4 hours after she had turned back. Her body was found near a home at the northeast base of the mountain. She had apparently left the trail during her descent, staggered off in the direction of nearby residences, and collapsed outside a house while apparently attempting to reach help. No one was home. Same mountain, same morning, same trail. One person completed it and walked to his car. The other was in the early stages of heat stroke at the halfway point, made a decision to turn back, and was found hours later near a stranger's door. Captain McDade described what was likely happening to her in that window, between the decision and the moment she could no longer make decisions at all. In the early stages of heat exhaustion and heat stroke, a person becomes delirious. Their faculties are no longer reliable, but the delirium does not announce itself. It arrives as confusion that feels like fatigue, as wrong turns that feel like correct ones, as the certainty that the parking lot must be just past the next rock. In March 2025, a man was hiking Echo Canyon Trail with his family. The time was approximately 9:30 in the morning, still early, not the peak heat of the afternoon, not a summer month. Technical rescue teams from Phoenix and Tempe were called after reports of a medical emergency near the summit. They found the man accompanied by family members. He was unconscious and not breathing. A Phoenix fire helicopter airlifted him to an ambulance at the base. He was transported in extremely critical condition. The Phoenix Fire Department confirmed his death the following day. He was not alone. His family was present. He was hiking in March when Phoenix temperatures are well below summer extremes. The mountain took him anyway. The trail does not reserve its danger for August afternoons with unprepared tourists. It happens on a Tuesday morning in spring with family nearby. The trail holds its most concentrated danger for a specific type of hiker, not the reckless one, not the careless one, the one who prepared reasonably, who got an early start, who brought what seemed like enough water, who made it to the top, and who learned too late that the summit is not where the judgment should end. Eric Fernandez was 23 years old and had recently graduated from the University of Washington with a degree in chemistry. He was visiting Phoenix with his father to see a friend. He was physically fit and had some hiking experience, though not in desert conditions. On May 31st, 2014, at approximately 1:30 in the afternoon, he drove to a sporting goods store and bought a hydration pack and some small bottles of vitamin water. He drove to the Echo Canyon parking lot. His father, Maximo, had declined to join him. It was too hot for that, Maximo said. Eric told his father not to worry. He could handle it. The temperature reached 108 degrees Fahrenheit that afternoon. Eric reached the summit. Another hiker near the top noticed him. He looked tired and very sweaty. That was the last confirmed sighting. He did not return to his car. A search was launched and then halted. 3 days later, volunteer hikers, people who continued searching after the official effort stopped, found his body wedged between two large rocks in a crevice on the mountain's southwestern face. He was approximately 500 feet below the summit. The Maricopa County medical examiner concluded he had likely developed an elevated core temperature that led to unconsciousness and ultimately death. 500 feet from the last point where another hiker saw him alive to where his body was found, the distance was roughly the length of a city block and a half. He was on the most popular trail in Arizona, in a city of 5 million people, surrounded by other hikers. His body was not found for 3 days. He had bought a hydration pack specifically for the hike. He had made it to the top. He had done, by any reasonable measure, what a person tries to do. The mountain does not negotiate those terms. If you are planning to hike Echo Canyon Trail, or have done it before and are planning to do it again, there are things the rescue data makes unmistakable. Start before 7 in the morning during summer. The goal is to be off the mountain before the heat builds, which means completing your descent before 10 a.m. if temperatures will be high. This is not a preference. The descent is the danger window, and the descent happens after your water is mostly gone. Carry more water than seems necessary. 1 liter per hour in summer heat is the practical baseline, and many people bring far less. There is no water on the trail. There is no shade to rest in while you recover. If you run low at the summit, you have already entered the problem. Do not separate from your group. The Phoenix Fire Department has confirmed this pattern across multiple deaths. The person who turns back alone, or who falls behind while others continue, removes the only external monitor for a condition that prevents self-monitoring. Heat impairment feels like tiredness. It does not feel like the emergency it is. Another person beside you is the only check on that. Treat the descent as its own challenge, not as the easy half. Slow down, use the handrails. Stop and rest in whatever shade exists. The 41% grade that felt manageable on the way up is different when your legs have been working for over an hour and your water is gone. If you begin to feel confused or more tired than the exertion explains, or disoriented about the trail, stop where you are and call 911. The window between early symptoms and serious impairment is short, and hyperthermia degrades the judgment you would use to recognize it. Do not convince yourself that the parking lot is just a few minutes ahead. If the National Weather Service has issued an extreme heat warning, do not hike. The trail closes between 8 in the morning and 5 in the afternoon on those days. Even early starts are higher risk than on a normal day. On July 7, 2015, before any of this became a lesson, Ravindra Takar was standing on the summit of Camelback Mountain with the people she loved most. She was 48, she was on vacation with her husband and her son, seeing a city she had traveled far to visit. She had just climbed one of the most famous trails in Arizona and reached the top. The Valley of Phoenix was visible in every direction. The trail home was marked. She had done the thing. At the summit, something shifted. She felt ill. She told her husband and son to go ahead. She would follow. It was a reasonable decision, the kind anyone might make. The trail was right there. The city was right there. The car was 1 mile and 2,000 feet below. She started descending. The trail was the same trail. The signs were the same signs. The city had not moved. Nothing visible had changed. What had changed was invisible, and it had been changing since she started climbing. Gathering in increments, she could not feel as danger because it felt like tiredness, like exertion, like the normal weight of a hard morning in the sun. Her family reached the parking lot. They waited. The search found her in a ravine, off a trail marked 37 times in broad daylight inside one of the largest cities in the United States. The trail is still there. The signs are still numbered. On a clear morning with the city glittering below the trailhead and hundreds of other hikers moving upward around you, it looks like something people do every day without a second thought. Most of them will be fine. The ones who won't know they're in that group until they're already past the point where knowing would have helped.